Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Hannah Quinn-Mulligan, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal. Coming up on the show today, our correspondent Thomas Hubert dons his riot gear to take part in a rural crime bust.
We have searched 5 properties under the Misuse of Drugs Act, and on 4 of those properties, illegal drugs were found. We have arrested 48 people, which is a lot for a rural, quiet district in South Kilkenny.
And a new scheme intends to pay farmers for their work by the hour.
We had to come up with a new way to try and pay farmers, and obviously something that often doesn't happen is they're not often paid for their time, the amount of time that they actually spend doing the activities. The department liked the idea, and it's an innovative one, and we hope that it works.
At €14.50 an hour, I'm sure it's not just the department who will like the idea. But first, it's been a tumultuous week after the beast from the east saw the destruction of farm buildings, loss of livestock and milk dumping as snow blocked roads to farms. Wexford was particularly hard hit, but the county had something to celebrate as Glanbia officially opened their new Wexford site and announced that they would be investing $160 million into its Bellevue site to expand its infant formula production. Minister for Agriculture Michael Creed was at the opening and spoke to our correspondent Pat O'Toole about the Glanbia announcement and the devastation Storm Emma had wrought on the county.
It's a great day, and it's a signal of ambition for the dairy side. I'm very conscious that it's coming on foot of a very difficult week in the region. But yes, I mean, you couldn't but be impressed. I got to walk through the plant. I mean, it has potential to double its throughput here. And at a time when, the chairman articulates the level of ambition, between new entrants and existing producers expanding, the company has to be ahead of that curve. So today is a milestone. The announcement of the Bellevue investment is a very significant one as well in terms of infant formula. So look, I mean, hats off to Glanbia. They really are, trailblazers at home and abroad.
And in terms of abroad, I mean, 2 legs of the table are here. We have the production capacity and the processing capacity, and Glanbia are trying to match the anticipated increase in both. I suppose the question then is the marketing and sale of all this product. Where do you see the growth areas, and do you have concerns that the level of expansion and the pace of expansion is going to put serious pressure on our markets?
Well, I think what we need to make sure about in terms of our ambition to expand, and that's well known, that we do that in a sustainable way, because we're just out of milk quotas imposed on us by the European Union, which constrained our capacity for 30 odd years. And we're out of that now. But we could rush headlong into a haymaker from the sustainability agenda. Infant formula is probably the highest value-added product that you can get into. It gives the possibility of returning the highest price to primary producers. But those consumers are asking all the questions now around not just the safe, traceable, nutritious, all that is taken almost for granted. Is it sustainable? Are we doing it right environmentally? So we have Origin Green. We need to ratchet up that. What we've done already is not a pass from having to do more.
You mentioned a tough week. We're here in a county that probably suffered more than any other in terms of certainly the damage done to farms, especially farm buildings. People
have been through the mill down here. We're still, in fact, trying to quantify the extent of it. There are, in this context, insurable losses. And obviously in that context, your insurance company is the source of redress for individual farmers. I'm very conscious of the horticulture side, because there are uninsurable structures there, particularly in the area of polytunnels. And we are looking at reopening our capital grant scheme for those. It was opened and closed some date after Storm Ophelia because the scheme was fully subscribed, but we are looking at the possibility of reopening that now.
You just mentioned uninsurable, Minister. In the context of the new cap, is the area of insurance around crop insurance or insurance of uninsurables from the insurance industry's point of view, is it something that we need to have a conversation about, especially when you have large-scale investments where someone can go broke in 2 hours of an extreme weather event?
Well, we've no tradition here, though they have elsewhere, and it is provided for under the current cap. We've never invoked that instrument. There has never been a demand for it. But I certainly think when you're after two extreme weather events in a very short space of time, particularly at a time when we're also going through a conversation about what the shape of the future cap should be, I think we need to consider that matter very seriously. I don't believe even the insurance companies offer the product here for insurance cover for crop loss. We need to probably be more active in that space in terms of consulting with the insurance sector and seeing how that product might be developed. But yeah, I know, like in this area now, a lot of crop was lost in the horticulture side, strawberries in particular. We've never had a scheme for that. There's no insurance for that, and it's something that maybe in the context of the cap we should look at.
Pat O'Toole was a busy man that day, as he also managed to talk to Glanbia CEO Jim Bergen. Now, given that roughly 35% of our entire milk production goes into the making of cheese, the impact of Brexit and the drop-off of Irish cheese exports to the UK is a concern. And O'Toole asked Bergen to address the issue.
In terms of the product here, I suppose Wexford cheese is known far and wide. It's an award-winning brand, not just here but in the UK as well. And they're the dominant markets for cheddar. With the shadow that Brexit has shown over the market relationship and the trading relationship, is there a future for cheddar outside the UK, or are there other cheeses that we should be looking at? How do you see that?
Yeah, well, I suppose we put it in context first. We have 80,000 tonnes of cheese produced off cheddar plants. And so what that means is that we can produce a range of cheddar variants off those two facilities in Ballyregget and in Wexford. And, you know, the job, when you see a risk on the horizon like Brexit, the job always is to diversify away from the risky market. We do have a high dependence on the UK today, but we also have built up markets in Japan, South Korea, and in the Middle East. In actual fact, we're the largest exporter to Japan of cheeses from Ireland. But that's, you know, they're tougher markets. They're further away. We've had, you know, a great relationship with the UK over many years, you know, and we hope that all the people involved will see sense and continue to have this open relationship that we have with the UK.
Another very big announcement today. I mean, it's not brand new news. You flagged it, especially in your recent round of farmer shareholder meetings, that Bellevue is due for a further expansion and in both capacity and also, I believe, infant formula. So maybe you talk us through what you've announced today.
Sure, yes. So we have announced a 160 million investment in Bellevue, which will happen over a number of years. The most immediate part of that is the development of a third dryer, a similar size, 7.5 tonnes per hour, and that will bring the capacity of Bellevue from about 19 million litres up to 34 million litres by March of 2019. And we will need that capacity at that time to stay ahead of our farmers, because our farmers are so ambitious at the moment and growing very, very strongly. On the infant formula front then, we have been developing, I suppose, quietly our capability. So we have to have people who understand the infant formula industry very well. They have the culture of managing a plant to infant formula standards. And indeed, the plant itself is recognised as one of the best actually in the world, infant nutrition plants. So we have built a lot, but it's quite an arduous journey. It's a tough market to get into, but it's a very, very good market, you know, and we're quite focused on that. But as I said, it's not an instant or overnight success.
Finally, can't, I suppose, let the day pass without mentioning the difficult 10 days that we've had farmers and processors alike, and I think a huge effort made. Do you want to make a comment about what both Glanbia suppliers and Glanbia the company have had to face through, and how you've come through that?
Yeah, well, first of all, we obviously want to avoid events like this, but you know, there's always a positive side, and in what happened over those few days brought out the best of human nature in people, and we saw incredible things being done, whether that was generosity from neighbour to neighbour, whether it was courage of our milk drivers going out in awful conditions to try to collect milk, whether it was the commitment of our employees. There's a man here on the site who walked for an hour to get in here on Sunday morning in the snow to start up the plant, and others who had to do the same thing. But there is a legacy on farms this week where they're trying to pick up the pieces, fix leaks. Some places have lost roofs, get animals sorted out, and we had enough pressure on farms with the calving season before the snow ever came. So we're still very, very conscious of the hardship on farms.
We could do with that sun to keep shining for a couple of weeks.
We could. We're back in the sunny southeast today. I think you said yourself 12 degrees outside and sun shining, and long may that continue for Wexford.
Thanks, Jim.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Now, rural crime remains a major issue in parts of the country, and while many of us will have heard of the Garda-led Operation Thor in the news or on the radio, our correspondent Thomas Hubert went out to meet Gardaí and find out more about the operation on the ground.
It has a number of aims, Operation Storm. The first is crime prevention and crime security for people across the Thomastown district. We also, as part of crime investigation, search properties and arrest people. This has been a two-phased operation which has run originally for a few days at the end of February and again in the last few days. And I can tell you as of now, Thomas, that the results on how we have progressed is we have searched 5 properties under the Misuse of Drugs Act, and on 4 of those properties illegal drugs were found. We have arrested 48 people, which is a lot for a rural, quiet district in South Kilkenny. 14 of those people were arrested on warrants, while another 35 were arrested for various offences such as burglary, theft, criminal damage, and forgery. I suppose of significance to the rural communities, one person was arrested in relation to suspected theft of diesel and oil from tanks belonging to people in the farming communities. You've just been present with me at a meeting with the IFA and IFA families, and we're very much involved in this area and getting involved with local communities. Today our emphasis on those meetings was with the IFA families and the IFA, and building closer links and giving them crime prevention advice and telling them the services we can provide, and also making our management team available to them.
I suppose one aspect that you've emphasised in meeting the farmers today was the community alert groups that you're liaising with. How is that helping with your work? I suppose it's a very rural area, a lot of isolated farms. You can't have a Garda patrol car in every village every day. So how are those groups helping you?
Well, it's my aim since I took over here in August to make more visibility available, but you're correctly saying, we correctly discussed with the farming community, we can't be everywhere and we need the assistance of the communities. So in that we've built up a huge neighbourhood watch text alert in the area of Kilkenny, and it's been quite successful. It's resulted in a number of very, very important detections in relation to rural crime in our district over the past 12 months. And it is something we're hoping to grow. We've developed the first interactive map in relation to text alerts for Kilkenny, Carlow, and I think you've seen today at the meeting is very informative and shows the areas where we still need to get into, but it provides huge assistance to the Gardaí in crime investigation and prevention, more importantly.
Yeah, we saw this map that the Gardaí can really see if this area is of interest. There is a group there. This is the contact person. We can go in and have support from the local population. Essentially, that's what you're about.
That's what we're about, and it's also about getting crime prevention advice out there to all communities and to people, and again providing reassurance to people in rural areas that we are there to give them crime prevention advice, plus also to circulate or look for appeals in relation to maybe it might be a vehicle. We've had great success recently in relation to crimes where we sent out a text alert, we've got information, and we're subsequently able to make arrests as people were heading back to motorway to leave the area, and resulted in very good detections in South Kilkenny.
There was an interesting discussion with farmers earlier when some of them said, we don't always report when something is stolen or something like that. If it's small, we don't want to disturb the guards, or we don't think they're going to do anything about it. But you disagreed with that?
Yes, I disagree. We need to know, and we want to be right. Some people, there's a perception out there as, it's only something small. It's only maybe a tool in a shed that was taken or disturbed. We need to know. We want to know. Decent rural community people feel at times, I don't want to bother the guards to have enough done. That's a message I want to dispel. We do want to bother them for a number of reasons. We want to help them, we want to reassure them, we want them to know that we are there to protect them. But more so, it also identifies area where crimes are starting for us, and we can respond and put resources in. And if people don't tell us, we don't know. And my fear is that crime then, that person that committed would come back and do another crime, and all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 injured parties. So the big message we want to drive out in South Kilkenny is, please do bother, please pick up the phone, please ring us, and we will respond.
Stay tuned, because still to come, if you're a farmer, how you can earn €14.50 an hour, and a brave group of women head to the Arctic for charity.
Collapse in live exports to Northern Ireland. For more in this week's Farmers Journal, here's Paul Mooney.
Demand for cattle moving north at a new low. 4,000 farmers still waiting on glass payments. Weaning and sheep prices booming. Plus, €400 cut from farmers' milk checks this week.
And don't miss our essential spring AI supplement, which includes the active bull list, and we also bring you the latest heat detection aids for beef and dairy farmers inside this week's Irish Farmers Journal, on sale today.
A new sustainable upland agri-environmental scheme, or SUAS project, is being set up in County Wicklow, offering farmers up to €5,760 a year to take up more active roles in taking care of their farm environment, including shepherding. The new scheme is of special significance because Minister Creed has indicated that future common agricultural policy schemes could be modelled on localised schemes such as this one. Our correspondent William Conlon spoke to Brian Dunn of the Wicklow Uplands Council about what measures farmers had to undertake to be part of the scheme and what the aims of the scheme were.
Yeah, so the people that will be involved in it, we will be looking at different activities such as increased shepherding. The aim of that is to promote farmers to have the stock on the hillside for a bit longer during the year. Also vegetation management, be it controlled burning or mechanical removal of vegetation. We're looking at the potential for study visits, educational visits. Also, we're looking at an auction-based system whereby farmers can come up with their own tailored ideas on an issue that they would like to address on their commonage.
And then when it comes to actual finance or the funding the farmers will receive, it's kind of based on a kind of a strange payment system of per hour as opposed to...
So we had to come up with that because of the rules of the EIP are that it couldn't be it couldn't be an area payment or it couldn't be a headage payment. So we had to come up with a new way to try and pay farmers, and obviously something that often doesn't happen is they're not often paid for their time, the amount of time that they actually spend doing the activities. So this is why we've come up with this. And the department liked the idea, and it's an innovative one, and we hope that it works.
And how much is it per hour, and what other payments can farmers receive that have been outlined so far?
So on an hourly rate we're looking at $14.50, and that would include attendance at meetings or any training that they would undertake. That's an hourly rate of $14.50 within department guidelines. And then also additional payments that may be for contractors who come in to do work, that an invoice obviously for the works that are done would be submitted to the project group and they would be paid out. Like basically that any work is done will be covered by the project. No farmer will be out of pocket because of it.
And then the shepherding payment seems like an interesting one. Could you explain to me a bit how that works and the payment rates involved?
So the shepherding, we came up with a rate of €120 per shepherding event. So that's for a farmer as well as a trained sheepdog. It's an interesting one because we like the variation between commonage areas. Some are going to be quite steep, some are going to be quite large. So there's people that are spending hours shepherding, and it's not often taken into account. So we've come up with this rate, and that payment is to kind of to recognise that, and also that if someone can't do it themselves as they get older, that the money is available then, that they might wish to pay somebody else or pay a younger farmer in the area to do it, and that encourages younger farmers to get involved as well.
And is it they can get €120? Is it up to a maximum of twice a week? Is that for the whole commonage? For the group?
For the commonage group, for the commonage group, so twice a week, and we're said up to 6 months per year. Okay. 6 months of the year, So
And I see there's also payments of €300 per unit to try and get cattle back on the commonages. I know it won't be applicable for everywhere, but it might be applicable for some.
So some might be interested in that. Again, it depends. Some areas there's issues with TB, so people don't want to put cattle up into areas where there's a lot of deer. But if people do like cattle, it's a good option for tackling millennia or bracken, heavy vegetation, and that's something that we're looking at. So that option is there for people, and the €300 goes towards the loss of productivity because obviously they're not going to do as well as they would on the lowland.
I suppose the key thing that I got from it is that it seems to be a very, very flexible scheme, that whatever the farmers feel might be needed, they're the kind of areas they'll be focused on.
Yeah, exactly. Like this, it's coming from the ground up. This is a scheme that has been developed by the guys here in Wicklow. We've worked with them, we've taken their suggestions on board, and it's not that we can't, but we're not going to be rigid now in what we do. Like traditional schemes, reps, AOS, this was your plan, it was drawn up and you had to stick to it. There was no options or no deviation from it. As we've learned, that's not always the best thing. That there needs to be some flexibility. Things happen, things change. With uplands, there's so many variables as well. That we have to take those into account as well.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Now, as if we haven't had enough snow recently, a brave group of women are about to set off to the Arctic as part of a charity mission. Odile Evans found out more from Irish Country Living journalist Tracy Dunhey about the expedition.
So basically what it is 21 of Ireland's top businesswomen are heading off to do a trek in the Arctic to raise money for the butterfly skin charity Deborah Ireland. So basically butterfly skin is a disease, skin blistering disease, which there is no cure for. So they're basically doing this trek to raise funds for those affected and for their families.
And is it just to raise funds for them to live with the condition as they have it?
Yes, pretty much. So it's basically the money will go towards like community care and being able to provide like people to go out to the homes and assist with those who have the condition, as quite often the families are left on their own to deal with it, and it is a very serious condition that has a huge effect on their lives and the lives of their families.
So describe the condition for me. It's blistering on the skin, is it?
Yeah, so basically it's a skin blistering disease. So they were one of the women who I interviewed, she works for Deborah Ireland herself, and she was saying basically like they could get a cut and it might never heal. So the skin blisters, and then the only way they can treat it is by bandaging it, because as they were saying, there's no cure.
Right, so the women who are going to the Arctic, how long will they be there for?
They're going for a 6-day trek, so they're camping out, but they're also staying in a lodge. So the lodge has no power or electricity, so they'll literally be going down, breaking ice to get water, having to heat it up, washing themselves from a basin, and obviously the temperatures are very cold as well, so they were telling me things like they aren't allowed to like sweat whenever they're doing the trek, even though because it's physical activity, you think how is that possible, but they've basically been told as soon as their body starts to sweat to like open up their zips and things, because it's that cold, the sweat will turn to ice, it'll freeze on their bodies, which would not be good, so they have to be very cautious of that as well.
And what sort of backgrounds are they from? Like, are they in business, are they in farming, have they any kind of previous experience with expeditions like this?
Well, the 3 women who I was speaking to, they're all farmers' daughters, so they are from farming backgrounds. However, one of the ladies works with a pharmaceutical company, as I was saying, one of them also works with the charity Deborah, but there's also businesswomen from various different companies across the country, so it's all very varied in terms of the women who are taking part, and then there are people who are someone they love is affected by the disease. For example, a woman who's doing it, her daughter has the condition, so it's a very diverse range of women coming together to do it.
And just a reminder that the Women in Agriculture Awards closes next Tuesday. So please check out the website and enter a deserving woman that you think deserves a bit of recognition for all their hard work. And that's it from this week's podcast. You can stay in touch with all the farm news on our app, Facebook, Twitter and even Snapchat. Or if you're not a social media fan, the paper will be in all good newsagents tomorrow. I'm Hannah Quinn-Mulligan and the sound engineer this week was Ferdia Mooney.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.